It's time for City Beat, your source for all the latest news on the city of Thompson. Only on 102.9 CHTM, your radio station.
Good morning and welcome to City Beat here on 102.9 CHTM. My name is Stuart Walter and my guest this morning is Mayor Dennis Fenske.
Good morning.
Let's talk about what everyone has to deal with now. Winter has reared its ugly head and is here to stay. Could you give us an update on the latest on the snow removal?
Sure. So we're running a regular day shift today and tomorrow, Friday, with graders and sanders. We'll have a sander out on Saturday as well, and then we're going to go to our normal winter double shift starting on Monday. So there'll be a day shift and an evening shift as well for snow removal and sanding to keep the street safe. Just a reminder to drivers that road conditions have changed, so adjust your driving habits. Give yourself extra time to stop at intersections. Be more aware of the kids in the school zones because they'll be in the short time playing on the snow piles. So just be aware of your surroundings as you drive around the community.
Moving on to our favorite topic on this show, City Council. There was two meetings this week. We'll deal with the regular meeting next week. We'll talk about the organizational meeting right now. That happened last night. We'll get into the big announcements as we go on, but I think the biggest one at the beginning is you announced officially and publicly that you are not running for mayor in the next election. What led you to that decision, and why was last night the right time to publicly make it?
Sure. Two-part question. So the first, I was employed with the City of Thompson for 19 years in various roles, and then I was elected to council in 2010 as a councillor, and then elected as mayor in 2014. So that gives me, I'm going into my 8th year on council. Similar to former Mayor Tim Johnson, who talked about term limits and not staying around too long. This is my 8th year on council, as I mentioned. It's timing is right for someone else to step up, and I felt last night was the right time to announce that as part of the organizational meeting, to take away any discussion moving forward or whether I am or whether I'm not. It's clear, it's out there, and so those that are interested in running for council or for mayor, they need to get their ducks in order. Just from a legal perspective, May 1st of 2018 is when the mayor candidates can announce, and they can also begin fundraising. And September 1st is when councillors can announce for their candidacy for the election, which will be held on October 24th, 2018.
So that's still a while away, but if you are thinking about it, just a bit of a heads up to know when your deadlines are and when you can start actually putting in the work.
Correct.
The next, I think, was one of the bigger announcements is the appointment of the deputy mayor. After 2 years, it will not be Kathy Valentino, who is the deputy mayor of Thompson. It is now Colleen Smook. Why was she the right choice for deputy mayor?
Just before I go to Deputy Mayor Smook, I want to thank publicly, as I did last evening, Deputy Mayor, or former Deputy Mayor now, Valentino, for her work for the last 2 years. She's been a very dedicated person on council. She's been the chair of finance for a number of years, and she's been heavily involved in the community, especially with the North Stars. So I just wanted to publicly commend her on her professionalism and the way that she's carried the city mantle in my absence, and I want to thank her very much for those duties. Moving to Deputy Mayor Colleen Smook, this last year she's really stepped up in regards to the Omnitrax file and the One North file. She is an expediter by trade, and also owns a local campground, so she's involved in the tourism aspect of it. And so she's carried the city's torch at those various levels provincially in our conference calls and discussions with ministers, both federal and provincial. So I think that she will do very well as the deputy minister. She's very committed to our community. If anybody knows Colleen, she's very committed volunteer, and so I look forward to having her serve as deputy mayor for the last year of her term, and I look forward to work with her, as I said, for this year.
Before we get into the committees, which were also appointed by you and voted on for the members last night, could you clarify how the process works, first for getting the chairs and then the members? I know even some people commenting online and talking aren't quite aware of the process, and some people thought they weren't aware their election was happening when Colleen Smook was named deputy mayor.
Okay, so we're all driven by the organizational bylaw, which basically outlines the process. We're governed by the Municipal Act. And so within the organizational bylaw, it states that the mayor will determine who the deputy mayor will be for the upcoming year. And so that was done, and Deputy Mayor Smook has been named that. The next is the mayor also names the chairs to the 8 committees that we have. And so what happens, and what I've done since day one in the first year, second year, and in this year, I do a survey of the councillors, I put it out, and to what their top 3 choices would be for committee selection. And so I did that again this year, and based on the submissions of councillors, and I will say up front that 2 councillors did not submit any interest in sitting on committees, as per we've done the last 3 years. And so from that perspective, I went with the wishes of council that submitted their interest. Not everyone got their first choice, but they got either their first or second choice. And so from that perspective, that's the process. We then move into committees, and that's an election by the council as a whole. So people are nominated from the floor during the council meeting, and then if there's more than one name, I should say the Liga Committee, the Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, is the only committee that has more than a chair and an additional councillor. They actually have an additional 2 councillors. So if there's more than one name for a committee being submitted, then we have an immediate election between that. And we did that a number of times last night. There were 1, 2, or 3 nominees for one of the positions. And so we went through that process. And again, that's a council vote. There's 9 votes cast for the nominees. Excuse me. And then that's determined who the committee seconds are.
So now let's go into the committee chairs. If you wouldn't mind going over, I don't think you necessarily have to go through all of them. I know there are quite a number of committees, both with the chairs and the members, but maybe go over how you came to the decisions, if there was any thought or process that went into it other than, like you said, the email that you sent to the councillors. Yeah,
so the chairs, basically there's a lot of experience in a lot of cases. And so, for instance, the deputy mayor, by naming Councillor or Colleen Smook as the deputy mayor, she automatically becomes the chair of the Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs. That's by the organizational bylaw. Penny Byer became the chair of Development Review. Kathy Valentino, who's been the finance chair since day one, continues as the chair of the finance. Colleen Smook has been chair and a member of Public Works before, so she sits as the chair. Judy Collada has been named as public safety chair. Blake Ellis is communications chair. Dennis Foley is recreation and community services chair, and the human resources is Blake Ellis.
And then is there any the committee members, if you wanted to talk about those a bit? You don't have to go through all of them, or you can just direct people to where they can find them. Yeah, so
we're just drafting a press release. Casper is doing that as we speak, and so that will be up on Thompson.ca by the end of the day, as far as what the committee assignments are and who the chairs are moving forward. So you can go to Thompson.ca.
And I believe I also have the information from last night also available on ThompsonOnline.ca as well.
Yes.
Let's move on. There is one question that came in to do with this topic before we move on to something else. The question comes from Serena, and it says, I'd like to ask why Councillors Wong and Matichuk were not appointed to committees.
Well, I think there's a 2-part to that. As far as the chair's position, as I mentioned, I do a survey each year of all of council, and I did it again this year, and Councillors Wong and Councillor Matichuk chose not to respond. And so I just went with those that responded for that. With the committee seconds, that's a decision of council. There's 9 votes and nominations, and I would like to note that there were a couple times that Councillor Matichuk or Councillor Wong were nominated, and they declined the nomination, which is they're right, but basically it's a democratic process of voting the second onto a committee.
The other question we have that was just called in has to do with the funding for community safety officers. If you could just give a brief overview of how that looks right now and any updates on if the province is going to step up to the plate as they had before.
Sure. So at this point, the funding is in place from the City of Thompson for this year. We are in current negotiations with the province of Manitoba through the Justice Department for an additional 2-year commitment at 50% funding, and so that's ongoing, and hopefully in the near future we'll have that resolved.
Moving on to the next topic, there is one, well, the big event this weekend would probably be the North Stars. They're in town for the 2nd weekend in a row against the Brandon Weekings, and it's a pretty big night on Saturday.
Yeah, Valley night. The Valley is the sponsor of the evening, so it's free admission to the event. They will have a lot of information available to the general public in regards to the operations and plans moving forward. But it's usually the biggest crowd of the year, and so we encourage everyone to come out and see the TRCC and the North Stars and the visiting Brandon team, and just enjoy yourself on a good Saturday evening.
And then finally, as we wrap up here, you want to talk about the Winter Games.
Yeah, just a reminder, Manitoba Winter Games we're hosting March 4th to the 10th in 2018. Volunteer registration is critical. It's online as opposed to years past where it was a paper exercise where you could just sign up at an office. This time it's an online process, and there's two things. If you feel comfortable in that, just go to thompson.ca and follow the links to the Manitoba Games site, and then it's a very quick and easy access to it, and also a quick and easy way to register. If you're not as comfortable in doing that, I know the YWCA is offering through Manitoba Games assistance to have you registered, and we're also through the Manitoba Games Council will be reaching out and doing group registrations where people can come in and staff will register you on your behalf. It will save you the trouble. So encourage everyone to get out there and register for the Manitoba Games, again, March 4th to the 10th, 2018.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
If you have any questions you'd like answered next week, email them in advance to CHTMnews@arcticradio.ca. For City Beat here on 102.9 CHTM, I'm Stuart Walter.
City Beat will be back next Thursday morning.